His fingers grazed my thigh, sending shivers down my spine. "Let me check something," he whispered, his voice dripping with an intent that made my blood run cold. In that moment, my cousin Marcus, the person I'd trusted since childhood, became a stranger. And that was just the beginning of how my world unraveled. I'm Sophie, and this is the story of how my seemingly perfect summer break turned into a nightmare. At 18, I just finished my freshman year at Riverside University, eager to return to our quiet town of Maple Grove. Our family home, a charming two-story colonial with white shutters and a wraparound porch, had always been my safe haven. Until it wasn't. Marcus moved in with us when I was 13 after his parents' tragic accident. He was 17 then, and from day one, he became the protective older cousin everyone wished they had. He attended my dance recitals, helped with my homework, and scared away any boy who dared to break my heart. My mother adored him, praising how he'd overcome tragedy to become such a responsible young man. Now, 5 years later, at 22, Marcus had established himself as a successful real estate agent in our small town. He still lived with us, claiming he wanted to save money for his own place, but Mom loved having him around. Family should stick together, she'd always say, completely unaware of how those words would come to haunt me. The day everything changed started like any other summer morning. Mom had already left for her shift at Memorial Hospital, where she worked as a nurse supervisor. I was in the kitchen wearing my favorite sleep shorts and an oversized university t-shirt, making my morning coffee. "Look who's finally up," Marcus's voice came from behind me, making me jump slightly. "Still not a morning person, I see." I turned, coffee mug in hand, to find him leaning against the doorframe. Something about his stance made me uneasy, but I brushed it off. "Some things never change," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. He moved closer, reaching past me for a mug. His arm brushed against mine, lingering longer than necessary. "But some things do change," he said softly, his eyes traveling down my body in a way that made my skin crawl. "You've grown up, Sophie." I stepped back, nearly spilling my coffee. "Marcus, what dash? Let me check something," he interrupted, his hand reaching for my thigh. "Stand still." My heart pounded against my ribcage as his fingers traced patterns on my skin. This wasn't right. This wasn't the cousin who'd taught me how to ride a bike, who'd defended me from bullies in middle school. "Marcus, stop," I whispered, my voice trembling. He pulled back slightly, but his eyes held something dark, something hungry. "Why? We're family, aren't we? Don't you trust me?" The sound of a car door slamming outside broke the moment. Mom was home early. Marcus stepped away smoothly, his face transforming into the familiar, warm smile everyone knew. But I'd seen behind the mask now, and nothing would ever be the same. If you're finding this story unsettling, believe me, I know. But sometimes the monsters aren't strangers lurking in dark alleys. They're the people closest to us, the ones we're supposed to trust. And this was just the beginning of my nightmare. That night, I lay in bed, replaying the morning's events. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Sweet dreams, little cousin. We'll talk more tomorrow." I stared at the message until my vision blurred, my hands shaking. How had my safe haven become a prison? How had my protector become my predator? The next morning, I tried to convince myself I'd imagined everything. Maybe I'd misinterpreted his actions, his words. But when I came downstairs and found him waiting in the kitchen, that delusion shattered. "Sleep well?" he asked, his voice honey-sweet but his eyes dark with something that made my stomach turn. I forced myself to act normal, pouring a bowl of cereal with trembling hands. "Fine," I mumbled, avoiding his gaze. "You know, Sophie," Marcus said, moving behind me, "I've been thinking about us, about how close we used to be." His hand settled on my shoulder, making me flinch. "Remember how you used to tell me everything? No secrets between us." The cereal turned to ash in my mouth. I could feel his breath on my neck, his fingers tracing circles on my shoulder. "That was different," I managed to say. "We were kids." He chuckled, low and dangerous. "But we're not kids anymore, are we?" The sound of Mom's footsteps upstairs made him step back, but his eyes never left me. I watched as he transformed again, slipping on that perfect mask of the caring cousin. "Morning, Aunt Linda," he called out cheerfully as Mom entered the kitchen. "Coffee's ready." "You're such a sweetheart, Marcus," Mom said, reaching for a mug. Sophie, honey, I'm working a double shift today. Will you be okay? No, I wanted to scream. No, I won't be okay. Don't leave me here with him. But instead, I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, Mom, I'll be fine. Marcus caught my eye across the kitchen, his lips curving into a subtle smirk. Don't worry, Aunt Linda. I'll take good care of her. Those words haunted me all morning. After Mom left, I retreated to my room, but even there, I didn't feel safe. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow that passed my door made my heart race. Around noon, my phone buzzed with another text from Marcus. Come downstairs. I want to show you something. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the block button. But what would I tell Mom? How would I explain suddenly cutting off contact with the cousin she thought hung the moon? Don't make me come up there, Sophie. Another text came through. We both know that wouldn't end well. My legs felt like lead as I descended the stairs. Marcus was waiting in the living room, sitting casually on the couch like this was any other day. There you are, he smiled, patting the space next to him. Come sit with me. I sat on the far end of the couch, trying to maintain as much distance as possible. But Marcus had other plans. He slid closer, his thigh pressing against mine. Remember when we used to watch movies together? He asked, his hand finding its way to my knee. You'd always get scared during the horror scenes and hide your face in my shoulder. I shifted away, but his grip tightened. Marcus, please. This isn't right. What isn't right? He challenged, his voice dropping lower. I'm just being affectionate with my favorite cousin. That's what family does, isn't it? His hand moved higher, and I felt tears stinging my eyes. This was the person who'd once chased away my nightmares, and now he was becoming one. Stop, I whispered, but my voice sounded weak even to my own ears. Make me, he replied, his eyes dark with challenge. Go ahead, tell someone. Who would believe you? The troubled college girl making up stories about her perfect cousin? The one who's been nothing but helpful and supportive all these years. The worst part was he was right. Who would believe me? Marcus had spent years building his reputation in our town. He volunteered at the local youth center, helped organize charity events, and was everyone's favorite success story. Next to him, I was just a naive college freshman. But as I sat there, trapped between his body and the arm of the couch, something inside me snapped. This wasn't going to be my story. I wasn't going to let him turn me into a victim. Get your hands off me, I said, my voice stronger now. Or I'll scream. Marcus laughed, but there was an edge to it. And then what? You'll tell Mom? She'll never dash. The sound of the front door opening cut him off. We both froze. Sophie? Marcus? Anyone home? It was my best friend Emma's voice. I'd forgotten she was supposed to come over to study. Marcus pulled away smoothly, but his eyes held a warning. This isn't over, he whispered before calling out in here, Emma. Emma bounced into the living room, her red curls wild as always. Hey guys. Hope I'm not interrupting anything. Not at all, Marcus smiled, standing up. I was just heading out actually. Got some houses to show. He grabbed his keys, then turned to me. We'll finish our conversation later, Sophie. The moment he left, I collapsed into tears. Emma was at my side instantly, her arms around me. Sophie? What's wrong? What happened? Through broken sobs, I told her everything. The inappropriate touches, the threatening texts, the psychological manipulation. Emma listened, her face growing darker with each detail. We need to tell someone, she said firmly. This isn't okay, Sophie. This is abuse. Who would believe me? I asked, voicing my biggest fear. I believe you, Emma replied, pulling out her phone. And I've been recording since I walked in. My heart stopped. What? Something felt off when I came in, she explained. The way he was looking at you, your body language. So I started recording. And I got his threat about finishing the conversation later, too. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a spark of hope. But it was quickly followed by terror. Emma, if he finds out he won't, she assured me. But we need to tell your mom. Today. The wait for Mom to return from her shift was excruciating. Emma stayed with me, helping me gather evidence, screenshots of Marcus's texts, diary entries I'd written about his increasingly inappropriate behavior, and her recording. When Mom finally came home, I thought my heart would explode. She found us sitting at the kitchen table, my hands shaking as I clutched a cup of cold tea. Girls? What's wrong? She asked, immediately sensing the tension. Mom, I started, my voice trembling. I need to tell you something about Marcus. Her face changed as I spoke, transforming from confusion to disbelief to rage. When I finished, she was silent for a long moment. That bastard, she finally whispered. My own nephew. I trusted him with my daughter. She pulled out her phone and dialed the police without hesitation. I'm reporting a sexual predator, she said, her voice steel. Everything happened quickly after that. The police arrived, took our statements, and collected the evidence. Marcus was arrested when he returned home, his perfect mask cracking as they read him his rights. The trial was difficult. Marcus's lawyer tried to paint me as a troubled teenager seeking attention, but the evidence was too strong. Emma's recording, the text messages, and testimonies from other young women who came forward after my story broke, it all added up. Marcus was sentenced to 15 years. As they led him away, he looked back at me one last time. The darkness in his eyes was fully visible now, no longer hidden behind the mask of the perfect cousin. It's been 2 years since that summer. I'm back at university now, studying psychology with a focus on trauma counseling. Every week, I volunteer at a support group for survivors of family abuse. Because the hardest lesson I learned is that sometimes the monsters wear familiar faces, but the most important lesson is that we don't have to face them alone. Mom and I are closer than ever. She's never forgiven herself for not seeing the signs, but I've told her repeatedly that Marcus fooled everyone. He was counting on our trust, on family loyalty, to keep his secret safe. To anyone listening who might be going through something similar, you're not alone. Your voice matters. Your story deserves to be heard. And most importantly, it's not your fault. If this story has touched you, please subscribe. Together, we can break the silence surrounding family abuse. This isn't just my story anymore. It's a reminder that the truth, no matter how painful, needs to be told. Because in the end, the light of truth is the only thing that can drive out the darkness of secrets.